What if I told you that the greatest bank robbery in the history of the world was not committed by criminals in masks, nor by shadowy hackers in a basement? It was not a dramatic raid with getaway cars screeching around corners while sirens wailed. This monumental theft was committed by a government against its own people. The mastermind who orchestrated this crime from 1,000 miles away in his Kremlin office was Joseph Stalin. Try to visualize the impossible weight of 70 massive African elephants, all sculpted from solid, gleaming gold. We are talking about 510 tons of pure bullion. This was a fortune so immense that it required a convoy of trucks just to move it, a value that defies understanding. Yet this entire wealth vanished in a single week. It was not stolen by bandits, but officially transferred with government paperwork. This is the story of how the fourth largest gold reserve on the planet was loaded onto trucks in the middle of the night and shipped to a country that never intended to give it back. This is the story of the day Spain went broke, the day its economic foundation was pulled out from under it like a rug. It is a tale of betrayal so devastating that its echoes still reverberate through Spanish politics nearly 90 years later. And the receipt for that transaction is still missing. To understand this catastrophe, we must go back to 1936. We must go to Madrid, but not the Madrid of tourists. We must imagine a city trembling with fear, holding its breath as the Spanish Civil War explodes like a bomb. Political tensions suddenly erupted into open warfare. The air is thick with the acrid smell of smoke and the metallic taste of fear. In the distance, you can hear the low, ominous rumble of artillery that sounds like thunder that never stops. It is the sound of General Francisco Franco's nationalist army marching on the capital, getting closer every day. These are ruthless, battle-hardened soldiers, disciplined and German-trained, backed by Hitler's Luftwaffe and Mussolini's tanks. They are advancing kilometer by kilometer despite desperate Republican resistance. Behind barricaded streets, nervous militiamen in mismatched uniforms clutch rifles they barely know how to use. The Republican government is in a state of absolute panic. They are losing on every front. Their armies, composed mostly of workers and peasants with more passion than training, lack coordination and equipment. The professional officers had defected to Franco. What remains is a chaotic patchwork of loyalist units, all brave but unprepared for modern warfare. Their equipment is antiquated, and their supply lines are chaos. Most devastating of all, their supposed allies in Europe had abandoned them. Britain and France declared a policy of non-intervention, a polite term meaning they would watch Spain burn. They would not sell weapons or send support. They closed their eyes while fascism spread like a plague. The Republic was alone, desperately alone. But the Republic had a secret weapon: gold, mountains of it. The Bank of Spain was a fortress, an imposing structure of stone and steel in the heart of Madrid. Deep beneath the banking halls were massive underground chambers carved from bedrock, filled wall to wall with gold. This wealth came from centuries of empire. For 3 centuries, gold and silver flowed into Madrid from mines in Mexico and Peru. Spanish galleons crossed the oceans loaded with treasure that built palaces and funded armies. Spain was the banker of Europe. Even after the empire faded, the wealth remained. Crucially, during the First World War, Spain stayed neutral. While Europe bled its treasuries dry, Spain sold steel, coal, and food to both sides, demanding payment in gold. By 1936, the vaults held over 700 tons of fine gold, the 4th largest reserve in the world, worth nearly $100 billion in today's money. It was the ultimate insurance policy, the foundation of the Spanish economy. But now the fascists were at the gates. The government knew that if Franco captured Madrid, he would take the bank. With that wealth, Franco could buy the tanks and mercenaries needed to win the war. The gold had to be moved immediately. The decision fell to Juan Negrin, the Minister of Finance. Negrin was a complex man, a scientist and professor of physiology who understood economics deeply. He was a socialist, but a ruthless pragmatist. He believed the Republic had to survive at any cost. To do so, he needed modern weapons to fight Franco's German-backed army. But the democracies of the West had slammed their doors. The only nation willing to answer the phone was the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin saw an opportunity. He saw a chance to fight a proxy war against Hitler, spread communism, and most importantly, make money. Stalin was not an ideologue. He was a gangster on a geopolitical scale. He demanded collateral. He wanted the gold. The plan was hatched in secret. Take the entire gold reserve to Moscow for safekeeping. Negrin and the Prime Minister signed the order in September 1936, authorizing the transfer to a safe place. The logistics were staggering. The gold was stored 30 meters underground in vaults protected by massive steel doors. Over several nights, a crew of locksmiths, bankers, and anarchist militiamen moved the treasure. They packed the gold into wooden crates, reinforced military ammunition boxes weighing 65 kilograms each. These were back-breakingly heavy, requiring 2 men to lift. The gold included standard bars and millions of historic coins, British sovereigns, American double eagles, and Spanish doubloons dating back to the conquistadors. The trucks rolled out of Madrid in the dead of night, heading for Cartagena, a naval port on the Mediterranean coast. The journey was a nightmare of darkened roads, avoiding German bombers, and passing through starving villages where people had no idea the nation's wealth was rolling past their doors. The drivers and workers whispered rumors, but security was tight. In Cartagena, the gold was stored in caves carved into the cliffs. It waited there for weeks, while final negotiations with the Soviets took place. The operation was overseen by Alexander Orlov, the NKVD station chief. Orlov was a master spy, Stalin's personal representative, tasked with ensuring the gold reached Moscow. Years later, Orlov revealed he received a telegram from Stalin with a chilling message. The Spanish will never see their gold again, just as they do not see their own ears. From the start, it was a heist. In late October, 4 Soviet ships arrived in Cartagena. They were ordinary freighters, painted dull colors to avoid attention. The loading took 3 nights. Orlov handpicked communist workers to load the crates, telling them they contained ammunition. But the weight betrayed the lie. The gangplanks creaked under the massive load. Orlov stood watch, terrified of German bombers or anarchist sabotage. When the ships cast off on October 25th, they carried 7,800 crates, 510 tons of gold, representing 73% of Spain's reserves. The voyage to Odessa was perilous. The ships hugged the coast of North Africa to avoid Italian and German submarines, maintaining strict radio silence. They passed through the Strait of Gibraltar in the dark, crept past Tunisia and Tripoli, and finally sailed into the Black Sea. When the ships docked in Odessa in early November, the gold physically entered Soviet territory. The NKVD seized control immediately. The port was cleared, and troops lined the streets. The gold was unloaded onto armored trains with steel walls and armed guards. It traveled north to Moscow, to the state depository for precious metals, known as Gokran. The counting process was humiliating for the Spanish officials who had accompanied the gold. They were forced to stand behind a barrier like museum visitors while Soviet accountants weighed and cataloged every bar and coin. The process took months. Discrepancies appeared. Thousands of coins were missing, likely skimmed by corrupt Soviet bureaucrats. In early 1937, the Soviets issued a receipt stating they held the gold on behalf of Spain and would return it upon request. The Spanish officials signed, powerless to resist. Back in Spain, the Republic paid a terrible price for the weapons they received. Stalin charged them for everything: the tanks, the fuel, the spare parts, the ammunition, and even the salaries of the Soviet advisors. He charged them for the shipping of the gold. The Soviets used manipulated exchange rates to skim value off the top and charge premium prices for obsolete, rusting equipment. Historians estimate the markup was 30 to 40% above market value. It was a desperation tax. Furthermore, the Republic had to pay the salaries of NKVD agents who were running secret prisons and purging anti-Stalinist leftists within Spain. The Republic was funding its own oppression with its own gold. By 1938, the gold account was running low. The burn rate of modern warfare was devouring the centuries-old wealth. The Soviets slowed down shipments, leaving Republican soldiers rationing ammunition on the front lines. When the war ended in April 1939, the Soviets declared the gold was gone. They claimed Spain had spent every penny and still owed them $50 million. It was a perfect crime. The victim was dead, and the thief held the paperwork. The gold was melted down in Soviet smelters, erasing its Spanish origin. The historic coins were turned into anonymous bars. The Soviets sold this gold on international markets to fund their own industrialization, building factories that would produce the tanks to defeat Nazi Germany in the Second World War. Ironically, Spain's gold did help defeat fascism, but in Russia in 1943, not in Spain in 1936. The gold is gone, dissolved into the global economy, perhaps residing in jewelry or electronics today. But the memory remains. Juan Negrin, who died in exile, left his papers to the Franco government as a final act of patriotism, providing proof of the theft. Alexander Orlov defected to the United States, escaping Stalin's purge to tell the story. The Moscow gold serves as a warning about the nature of geopolitics and national wealth. In war, desperate nations make desperate decisions, and allies can be just as predatory as enemies. The day the trucks left Madrid, the rules of banking were shattered. The gold was meant to save the Republic, but instead, it bought foreign control, internal division, and ultimately, defeat. 510 tons of gold, the wealth of an empire, vanished into history, leaving behind only a painful lesson. In the chaos of war, there is no charity, only interests and power.